Iran just signed a memorandum of understanding with the Trump administration to end a war that started this year, and Tehran is calling it a victory over the United States. Let that sink in. The country that got bombed is the one throwing the parade. So what's actually going on here? Because if you read the headlines fast, you'd think this was a straightforward ceasefire. It isn't. According to reporting from The Hill, Iran is framing this MOU as a strategic win, while a faction of hardliners inside the regime is already pushing to renegotiate for tougher terms. Both things are happening at the same time. Victory lap on the outside, knife fight on the inside, and here's the detail that reframes everything. Iran's supreme leader right now is Mojtaba Khamenei, not Ali Khamenei, the man who ran the country for over 3 decades. Mojtaba, his son, and Mojtaba hasn't been seen in public. He's believed to have been wounded in a strike tied to the US or its allies during the war. So the man supposedly leading Iran's victory celebration is a leader nobody can actually see. Think about what that means for a second. The face of Iranian power is missing. The deal got signed anyway, and the regime is selling it as a triumph. That's not how winners usually behave. Here's where it gets sharper. When a government declares victory loudly, it's often because it needs to. Domestic audiences have to be told a story. Soldiers died, cities got hit, the supreme leader is wounded and invisible. You don't walk out of that and say, we took a beating. You say, we brought the Americans to the table. You say, we forced a deal you printed on every front page you control, but the hardliners aren't buying it. And that's the part of this story that got buried under the celebration coverage. Because if the deal were truly a win, why would the regime's own hawks be lobbying to tear it up and demand more? If this is the kind of behind-the-scenes read you came here for, hit subscribe. There's a lot more of this coming. Now back to those hardliners. In Iranian politics, hardliner factions are not fringe. They sit inside the Revolutionary Guard, inside the clerical establishment, inside the parliament. When they push back on a deal the supreme leader's office just signed, that's not noise. That's a power struggle in slow motion. They're signaling that the wounded leadership at the top may not have the muscle to enforce what it just agreed to, and that puts the Trump administration in a strange spot. Because what good is a memorandum of understanding if the other side's internal factions are openly campaigning to break it? An MOU is not a treaty. It's not binding in the way a formal agreement would be. It's a framework, a handshake on paper, which means the real test isn't the signing ceremony. It's what happens in the months after, when the hardliners start pulling at the threads. So why would Washington sign something that fragile? That's the question worth sitting with. One read is that the administration wanted the war ended, full stop, and an imperfect document beats an open conflict. Another read is that the US believes the wounded Iranian leadership is weaker than it looks, and a soft framework now gives leverage later. A third read, and this is the cynical one, is that both sides needed to declare victory and go home, and the MOU exists mostly to give each leader something to wave at their own cameras. Here's the part nobody saw coming. The celebration inside Iran might actually be the regime's biggest vulnerability, because once you tell your population you beat the Americans, you have to keep acting like it. You can't quietly comply with the terms. You can't be seen making concessions. Every move you make is now measured against the victory you claimed. And that's exactly the corner the hardliners are trying to paint the leadership into. Think about the timing. Mojtaba Khamenei is reportedly injured. His grip on the apparatus his father spent decades building is untested. He inherited the title in the middle of a war. And now, in his first major act on the world stage, he signed a deal that his own internal allies are calling too soft. That's not a victory, that's an audition. And the judges are not friendly. Now zoom out for a second, because this is where it gets really interesting. Wars between the United States and Iran have been threatened, predicted, and avoided for over 40 years. Multiple administrations came close. None of them crossed the line into open conflict at this scale. This one did, and it ended with an MOU. Not a surrender, not a treaty, not regime change. Just a piece of paper that both sides interpret completely differently. The American framing is that the strikes worked, the war ended on US terms, and the deal locks in a new status quo. The Iranian framing is that they absorbed the worst the US could throw at them and forced Washington to negotiate. Both of those things cannot be fully true, but both of those things can be politically useful at the same time. And that, more than anything, is what an MOU is designed to do. It lets two enemies walk away from the same table, telling two different stories. So what should you actually watch for next? A few things. Watch whether Mojtaba Khamenei appears in public, and how soon. The longer he stays hidden, the weaker the regime looks, and the louder the hardliners get. Watch whether the Iranian parliament holds hearings on the MOU. That's the formal mechanism hardliners use to box in the leadership. Watch whether the Trump administration starts publicly listing what Iran committed to, because the moment those terms become specific, the MOU stops being a flexible victory document and starts being a checklist with consequences. And watch the proxies. Iran's regional network, the militias and political movements it backs across the Middle East, are a separate story from the deal itself. An MOU between Washington and Tehran does not automatically silence them. If those groups start acting up while the ink is still drying, that tells you the hardliners are not just lobbying, they're operating. Here's the deeper thing this whole episode reveals. Diplomacy after a war is not really about the war. It's about the story each side has to tell when they go home. Iran needs a victory narrative because its leadership is wounded and contested. The US needs a closure narrative because no administration wants to be stuck in another open-ended Middle East conflict. The MOU is the shape that those two needs make when they collide. It's less a peace agreement and more a mutual permission slip to stop fighting without admitting anything. And that's why the hardliners matter so much. They are the ones refusing to sign the permission slip. They want the war to mean something more than a handshake. They want concessions. They want acknowledgement. They want the kind of terms that turn an MOU into a treaty and a ceasefire into a settlement. Whether they get any of that depends on whether the wounded man at the top can hold his own house together. So when you see the headline saying Iran declared victory, remember what's underneath them. A leader nobody can see, a document nobody fully agrees on, a hardliner faction quietly arguing the whole thing is a sellout, and an American administration that ended a war but may have signed a piece of paper that doesn't hold. Victory, it turns out, is the easiest thing in the world to declare. It's the hardest thing in the world to actually keep. If this gave you a sharper read on what's really happening, hit like and subscribe so the next one finds you.